In this video, this is the MMU3 on our MK4 that we're going to build, and we're going to print this test print in the end. Don't forget to like and subscribe. So my MMU3 from Prusa just arrived, and this is the one for the MK4. So this is just released as of April 2024. So you can see on the box here, MMU3 for MK4. They've been testing it for a while, so I'm pretty excited to get this opened and put it together. After opening the box, this is what we get. So just quickly going over it, we get our 3D printing handbook, a bag of Haribos. We get these new parts here. This is used to remove the Nextruder, which is part of the upgrade. And these two parts are the parts inside the Nextruder that we're going to replace, with a different, more robust material. Got some zip ties and some tubes, some PET-G, 2 rolls of that, thank you note, and the buffer plates, 3 motors, some hardware, and another box that's basically all related to the spool holders. So I chose the option when I ordered this to print the parts myself, and that's why it's shipped with some rolls of black PET-G, and it also comes, of course, with a black label to put on the front. Printed label as a part. So one of the things you might do though is decide you want to print it in your own color, and I like to do everything with Prusa Orange, so I ordered some of that and pre-printed all the parts in Prusa Orange. And you also might consider printing your label plate there in Prusa Orange. This part is on the Printables site as one of the remixes, and this is also another popular part. It goes in the back with some connectors. So I think those two pieces you might consider if you want to have a different color or if you want to have those connectors. So you might be wondering, why upgrade to the MMU3 from the MMU2S if you already have it. If you don't have one, of course, just get the MMU3. But the MMU3 adds this small part right here, which is a daughter board, which fixes some voltage issues in the MMU2S. The electronics board is the same between both of them. There is also a coupler piece which attaches to the end of the idler to solve some long-term deformation issues with the PET-G idler, which is this part, and that coupler attaches to this end of it. There is also, if you have the MK4, they've also found a long-term deformation issue with the parts in here to put pressure on the filament inside the Nextruder, and they've included a more robust piece pre-printed that they include with it for those parts, but that's just an MK4 part. Another piece that's really improved with the MMU3 is the buffer, and I've got one here from another MMU I have already, but this is the new buffer, and it's got a cartridge system where these cartridges go in, and they lock in there, and you can remove them, and there's a little wheel that spins the filament around and with a ball bearing on it. And so this buffer is drastically improved. It fixed a lot of the buffering problems. So overall, I think the firmware is the biggest one. And that's the piece that you can get right now in the MMU2S even. And then of course this daughter board is going to fix that voltage. Those are really the two biggies. And then the buffer if you need a buffer. If you're printing the parts yourself, you can get them on that URL there on the Printables page. And remember that under the files, we have a new set of R4 parts. You'll see these pop up. So make sure you get the R4s if you're printing them from scratch. There's also a comment about the difference between the parts, the R4s and R3s, and what you do need and don't need on the Prusa forum here. So this page has a discussion about combinations of parts, and just read through this. I'll call out in my assembly here when you really need a new part or not, but mostly that's the information you need to know. Also on here under remixes, when I show the parts that I made, if you go to downloads and see the most downloaded ones, this thing here, I'm using that. And also this front page here, which I also designed, these two. So here we're not doing an upgrade from an MMU2S, we're just doing a new MMU3 build. So we don't have to worry about tearing apart our old buffer to salvage parts or our old MMU2S to salvage parts. So we're just going to skip all that upgrade sections on the online instructions, which you should definitely follow because they have a lot of good comments. And we'll go to step 4, which is creating the idler. So here we've got the idler bag, and we just want to pull out of that the bearings and the rods, which we have here. So 6 of those and 5 of those. And this is our idler. And we're going to basically, the key is put it in the middle one first with the rod. You push the rod through the end, and then you put that one, that one, that one, and that one in. And then on the end, there's one you put last on the end. Okay, so you basically take a bearing and put it in here. And first, make sure, take some tweezers, make sure you've got all of the any threading out of here, any filaments that might get caught. So clean those out completely. We put that one in, and then turn it on the end, and you look down and you can see the hole it's in, and push the rod in, and then take the Allen wrench and push it through. You can see it kind of going in there. So that one's now in, and you can kind of push it, and then that should then spin freely. Okay, and you just do that with the other one then. So you start with the middle, that's the key. You put the next one in, put the rod in, lock it in. You got to do them in order like this, and then push it in there. It should have a little push at the end. It locks kind of like that, and that's how you do it. And the third one. Like that, and then flip it over and do the other ones. This one next. And I didn't get it all in all the way. See there, you got to push it all the way through. So there, push it all the way. And then the last one. Okay, and you can kind of see, so once you put them in, you can't really get past the other gears. That's why you got to start with this middle one first. So they should be all in there nicely. And then this last one just kind of goes on the end there. There's nothing, you don't put anything in the middle. You just put that right in like that and push it flush, and you might push it on the table to kind of make sure it's flat there like that. Okay, so that's the idler. Already finished putting this coupler on, but I just want to give you some tips to it first. You want to take your 2.0 Allen wrench, put the grub screw on it first, and then turn it and then screw it in, and you don't go past the middle. And put the coupler on the end of the idler where the flat part is here, and the grub screws are going diagonally across like that. And just tighten it using like this, and you can turn the hold your right hand like that, and then turn the idler so it goes quickly. Don't gorilla tighten it because it is going into plastic. I would not do it. I would not take the long torque method like that. I would just do it this way until it's tight on those 4, and then make sure everything is spinning. All these are spinning, and the grub screws are not obstructing the hole. Okay, so now we're going to put the idler into the idler body here, push it into here, going to the left that way, so hold it like that, and then take one of these rods and jam it in the end, and it needs to go into that bearing there. So there, now it's in there, see? It's all the way in the bearing, and shove it back so it's firm like that, all the way in there. So take an M310 and then screw that in so it sort of blocks the hole. Take this little stopper and push it in there into that hole, and it needs to be flush with the top, so flush like that. take one of these little nuts, like a square nut like that, and just jam it in there. You might need one of these small tools to help you push it in like that. And then also I always check to make sure, it's good to make sure that that is centered. That's a trick. Okay, this part's a little tricky. It keeps tripping me up. Get the motor so the flat part is pointing up on the top of it right here. Make sure the grub screw is aligned on the top, and then stick it into the hole. This is the trickiest part so far, because if it slips, we got to keep doing this over and over again. So get the grub screw right on top of the thing, and as soon as we get one of these screws in, I'm going to tighten that grub screw because it keeps slipping out of position on me. I'm going to put that in there with a 2mm thing. Make sure it's aligned on top. See, that one's on. And while you're at it, try to make sure that these wheels are in the middle of these slots. When you turn, don't turn it, but just look at it right now. Okay, so that's engaged it now, so it's not going to slip. That's the key. Okay, just enough so it doesn't slip. And now we can kind of move this back. See, that can move. So you can move this backward and forward. You want to move it so these wheels are in the middle, like that. Okay. And then check again that the grub screw is on top of the flat part there. Okay, good. Now we'll put the other screw in there. Okay, check again that these wheels are good. You're supposed to then put 2 screws here, like that, and then get the ball joint one. And so make sure they're straight. And then do the other one. It should go in easily. If it does not going in easily, you don't have it at the right angle, so don't force it. Double check that grub screw that it's flat on top. It is. There you can see the light reflecting off it. Tighten up this motor here. Now you can tighten these motors up. So we got the motor locked in nicely. Okay, so now we want to make sure that this idler is in the right position. We're going to lock these other grub screws in. So look at it there, make sure it's in the middle of the slot. You can move this around a little bit because we haven't fully tightened it. Okay, that looks pretty good. That looks pretty good to me. Right there in the middle there. See that one? We want these to be centered. Maybe move down a little bit. This is really important. This is really important to get this right, or else you'll miss the filament. It won't push on it. Okay, once you think you've got it, turn this thing around and tighten the other grub screw here. And don't over tighten it or you'll strip it. Just get it so it's not going to move and it won't slip, and we have that centered in the middle. Okay, now we're going to put this selector together with a couple steps. So get this magnet out here and stick it in that slot right there, all the way in. And then take this ball. This is a magnetic ball and it comes with the MMU. If you had the MMU2S, this is not the same ball. Don't use the ball with the MMU2S. It's a new ball, it's a magnetic ball. Stick it in there, it'll be attracted to it because it's magnetic. It won't fall out, see? Take one of these little guys, put this in there. Okay, that one. And again, make sure it's a little test. Sometimes you gotta push it. You gotta push it into that little area. So put an M30 screw on it so it's flush. And then you can push it into that little opening. Look at the alignment before you push it. Look at the alignment before you push it. Line up the hexagon. When it's pushed straight, unscrew this back out, but don't pull it, just slightly unscrew it. Trapezoidal ring is on one of the motor shafts. If you were using MMU2S, it was you should have salvaged this thing, because these things I think are they're kind of expensive from the store. They're made of special material. So this goes like that, and then we take a M3 10 screw and secure it in there in those two locations. So that's in there, like that, like that. Okay, so that's all together. Okay, now take the two rods and stick them in the holes here and here. Push it onto a flat surface to get them inserted. I'm using a lot of force here, by the way, to get that in. Okay, so that was a lot of force, but that's what it does. So now those are in there. The front plate's going to go across here, so we have to have two of these nuts, and they have to get pushed in so they're underneath those holes. So one there. And one there, and take your little tool and push it in all the way and do the test, do the wiggle test. Okay, and then take your, I'm using my plate, but yours is this, you can use the one that came with it. The flat side goes on the side where this is, and the slope side goes away from it. Okay, so here's our selector so far, and looking good. So we're going to put the SuperPINDA into it now. They say to stick it in here until it gets to the top of that little D, or sideways D. A lot of people claim that they keep breaking this part here when they try to tighten this later. So you might want to first kind of flex it up a little bit to get it. You know, this is printed in PET G, which is sort of flexible, so you could sort of do this to it to maybe get it so it's used to being bent. I don't know, but we want to put a one of these little nuts here in this slot. We'll have to adjust that later. It's still moving around, I think. Okay, so I'm just going to use a piece of blue painter's tape about that long and just stick it around right there. Wrap it around it, just so I'm not putting too much strain on the plastic piece there, and just the only purpose of this is just to get it so we can tighten this thing. So just put it in there again. Okay, so now it's almost good the way it is now without even much of any screw. It's almost, that's perfect. Okay, so then I'll just put that in, and then you don't have to tighten it much at all. No risk of breaking that part or anything. Okay, so now we're going to put the blades in here. So blades are going to go right in this area. And you put this in first, the square lock nut. Make sure it's in the hole there. And the blade box. It says MMU2S, but it's also for MMU3, so it doesn't matter what it says. And in here are two blades. We need both of them. There's an extra box that came with it too, so you're only going to use one of these. The other one goes like that. That's all you have to do, just get them in those little spots so they're flush. They should be nicely fit. It's printed out really well here. It's okay, there's a little gap between them. And then that goes on like that. Okay, I've got this sanded down now with 80 grit sandpaper pretty far down. So let's just hope that that's going to be enough so it doesn't stick out as much there. And screw this in. It's pretty good. It's better than it was, definitely. Yeah, it's just, the blades are not going to move. They're locked in there, and then you've got that thing pushing down on top of it, so it's not going anywhere. Okay, call that a day. That's good. Okay, now we need to put some bearings into this part here, here and here. Let's get these out. There's a bag. We've got 3 left. That's what we need. Brand new bearings. And right, yeah, this is I printed this pretty well. Look, that just pushed right in there nicely. It doesn't fall out or anything. Okay, there, it's in. Good. Perfectly flush, not going anywhere. And then we've got this one. It's going to go right in, kind of sitting in there, I guess. Not sure how that's going to work. Let's see. It doesn't go there, it goes here. So I have 3 pieces of PTFE tube here. The one on the left is a 2mm inner diameter. The one on the left and center is 2.5, and the one on the right is 3. So the old MMU2S used a 2mm inner diameter, the one on the left. The MMU3 uses a 2.5, and it's using it for these small tubes inside the MMU, as well as the tubes that go behind the MMU. So they've ditched the 2.0, and they've now gone with a 2.5, which adds less friction. They're still chamfered, though, the ones inside the MMU, so you've got to be careful which orientation you use. If you want to, you can do what I'm doing, and I use 3mm inner diameter, which are even less friction, and allow you to, but you have to cut them with a PTFE cutter, like this, and so you don't have to worry about the chamfer if you do that, and there's less friction. As long as you can control the static slippage behind the MMU, you're good to go with these. Okay, so we're going to use these when we do the rest of the assembly. Okay, so here we've cut the 4 PTFE tubes, and here's the original 2.5 chamfer one, and lining that up to the ones I made that were 3mm internal diameter. You can see they're roughly the same. They're roughly the same size, so that's where they end, just peeking out the end there. So that's basically what we've done. And we now push this onto the front of the, it goes into there in these holes like that, and then you secure it with the 4 screws here. So that's all there is to it for putting this part together, really. Okay, so now we need to put this piece on the back, and the little triangle goes on top. I'm using my custom one with the PC4M10 connectors. As you can get this on Printables. If you look for the MMU parts and look at remixes, you'll find this. But that's the one. And then you got to get a M30 screw and just put a nut, just barely like 1 thread on the end there, like that. And then stick it in the hole and pray. And then the other end, take your M4 screw, your M10 screw, and put it in, and then while holding down on the other one, press on the top, and hopefully it engages. And I got extremely lucky there in the first try, but that's how you do it. Now it's in there. And you repeat that on the other one to get this in there solid. Okay, now we start working on this pulley assembly. You want to put these little things with grub screws this way on here and line it with the flat side. And if they don't go on, loosen them slightly. Do not lose these grub screws. If you lose the grub screw, you can't order them individually. You have to order the whole pulley thing, again, from Prusa. Really tiny grub screw ones. Just loosen them up a little bit. Do not loosen them too much, or else you will never find them. It'll bounce on the floor, and that's it. And then just put it back on before you lose sight of it. But don't tighten it fully, just so it doesn't fall off. And just do that for all 5 of them. Don't worry about where they are yet. We're going to slide them around. I found a good trick for this is just to put the thing on the table like this, and then put the pulley on top, and then loosen it just until it slides, and then it slides in, and then immediately tighten it back so you don't lose that little grub screw. Okay, put the hex nut into here. We test it to make sure. Okay. And then take the pulley body that we did with the power cord facing to the back and stick it into here. And make sure it engages the pulley at the other end and goes into that hole. Like that, so you push it in. Okay, mine's not going fully in there. Let's see, is that? There, now it did. Okay, it snapped. Okay, good. I need that tighter so the other ones can... In fact, I'm gonna fully tighten that because I cannot get ball joint one. Well, not whatever you call it. There it goes. It just had to find its sweet spot. Maybe wiggle it a little bit. Okay, now it's in. Good. And these things kind of get stuck all the time. Okay, then this one, take it out, make sure it's in right, back it up, and then push it in. I won't lie, this part's a little tricky right here. Yeah, don't force it the wrong way, that's for sure. You just strip the threads of the motor. And then tighten that one. And then that puts that in correctly. Okay. So there we go. So right here we just want to align these pulley bodies. So I take the long, thin one, smallest one, and it just drops in like that. I mean, you can see exactly where it lines up then, and then loosen this, or if you need to, don't loosen it, over loosen it, because you might lose the grub screw, but just tighten it a little bit to get it locked to position. And so you just then repeat and do that for the next one, and you can kind of move down and do each one like that to get them all lined up. Okay, so now we're going to put the selector inside of the idler body here, and so basically just place it right there, and then take one of these rods and stick it into the bottom, and it goes through the hole there and into the other end, and then you take the other one and put it to the top like that. Kind of push these both in. You could use a tool to do that. Make sure it's all the way in there, and then just slide this back and forth to make sure it moves freely. You know, it should really have no resistance at all. I can just tap that. That's what you want. Okay. So now we're going to put a piece here, a little one of these guys. Put that in here, and put another one down here, and then taking the motor with the cable pointing up and sticking it through there, and then basically turning that into the idler so it kind of screws itself in. You screw that so it goes in there like that, and you'll see the idler starts moving across in the middle. And then once you got it in there, put a screw. Here, I'll pause this while I do this. So it's basically I'm going to put that one in, and I'm going to tight, and I'm going to put this one kind of loose. Okay, so we have this one in firm and that one in firm, and then this one we're going to put in a little looser because we don't want to tilt the motor, it says in the instructions. So I won't fully tighten it. I'm not going to gorilla tighten, I'm just going to put it in there like that. Okay, and then it says, interestingly, so you can kind of turn this and move the thing back and forth, put it all the way to the end, and then just loosen these two right here and then tighten them again. So loosen them just a little, and then kind of wiggle it around a little bit to make sure it's smooth. Get that out of there, that's cord. And then just sort of tighten it again a little bit, not too much. Okay, so that one and that one. I guess they said in the help that after their testing, that was kind of the best practice to do it that way. Notice I've got this rubber band on just to keep that cord out of the way the whole time. And I'll talk about this in a minute, but I'm using the R3 parts here throughout. So you see it says R3 because I printed these when I ordered the thing, you know, about many months ago. They've got R4 parts now, so you should print those. But there are two parts that now you should not use because of electrostatic discharge. If you printed R3, you're all good, except for this. You got to print an R4 and the new R5 electronics part. If you haven't printed anything, print everything R4 and that one R5 piece. Okay, so now we're going to combine these two parts together like this and put a shaft here into this hole. It should go in like that, and then put another one in the other side. There, we got that one in, that one in. Screw on both sides so it doesn't come out, and you don't fully tighten this, it just has to kind of go in. We're going to put one there and then one here. This piece here and now put a spring around an M30 long one. Do two of them, two springs like that. And you just need to get it in there so it doesn't really, just below the surface just a little bit like that. That's all you need to do. Okay, that's good. Now it won't, that nut's engaged. I'm gonna do the other one here. Okay, so sometimes these screws right here, like these, don't engage. So if that's the case, take one of these long ones and stick it through to kind of center the little nut that's supposed to engage right in there. So it's got a clear path, and then this will go in fine, but don't over tighten it. It just goes about flush to the surface, that one and that one. And these two, right, I just put in here, this one, don't tighten that at all. Just get it so it's basically flush. Same with this one. That's just to prevent these screws from falling out. It's not doing anything functional other than that. And so here I'm going to print these new parts here in the Prusa Pet Orange. I use this stuff. I don't know. It's just great. Basically, you don't have any bed adhesions things laying in your bed weld. But anyway, this stuff I'm going to print the new. And it's a little USB with Chris's Basement on it. I got that from the East Coast Rip Rap Festival. Kind of cool. Not USB. Because the one that comes with Prusa's, you know, pretty bad. So we'll start this out and we're going to print those things there. I don't know if you can see it, but it's the LED cover and the electronics thing. So it's going to take a couple hours to get that done, and we'll come back when that's finished. This is the R4 replacement for this and the R5 piece that goes over the electronics board. Both of those are new. This is new as of April 2024. This is now, the R3 for this is now obsolete as of April 2024. So for the electronics board, we put these 3 nuts into the holes here. Do like that and then push on it to really get it seated down in there. R4 part. This is the only R4 part I have. I'm actually using R3 and everything else because I already had printed them. But if you printed R3, you need to print this R4 one because it's a little thicker than the R3 part for electrostatic discharge protection. And now I can seat it. Now it's getting a grip. And I'm not really over tightening this or anything. It's just kind of There, so that's good. Okay. Okay, so here's the new PD board here, and here's the PD board cover. It's in R5 part. You can see right there, it sort of says it on the end. So you want to hold it like this, and I found holding it like that and then sticking it in here in the groove, that will get it in, and then you slide it across. Like, push it across like that, so now it's in there. And that protects it, I guess, so. It also makes it impossible to stick it in the wrong way, which apparently, according to the instructions, if you stick it in the wrong way, it can mess this up. So now, with this orientation like this just goes in like that on the end. And it fits in. So we'll connect the cables now. So you want to put the electronics part like this, and then put the motors so you have one motor on the right and two motors on the left. So you're looking at the back of the unit. And then you just go across and take each motor, starting from the right, and plug it in. The motors go 1, 2, 3, like that across. And then this goes, we can take that out now. That goes here. And then this part, let's see, they're the same. One's longer than the other. Oh, you put it in this way, not that way. So. Okay, so all that's plugged in now. Okay, we put a square nut right here and just push it in with a tool and then center it. Make sure it's centered. Also, while you're here, do the same thing on this side. Make sure this one's centered so it's easier to screw in there's a little nut there we put in a long time ago. Hopefully it's there for you. So now this thing, we want to make sure that these wires are behind that, and get these out of the way, and flip this over on top, and now stick a M318 screw and two of them, one here and screw those two in. There we go. So that's all together now. Okay, here's where I'm going to take this. This is an optional thing I printed, but it's a little PINDA cable strain relief. And it just goes in like this, through it. Like that. And then I'll just do that later. I'll just do it now. Cut that. And I'm not gorilla tightening that, I'm just like this. Okay, so now for some cable management. So we've got this cable stringing around here, and got a couple of this, and then we've got this one. So the instructions say to kind of stick this here and push this up and just secure it through this hole right there. And this one on the right, I'm only securing this cable right here with it, nothing else. I don't know what the instructions say, whether to put it under this or not, but I feel like I've already secured this with this one up here. I don't want to put any strain on it, so I'll just kind of put that in like that and put this through it. There, so that finishes the cables. Okay, now turn the unit over and put the M3 nuts, these things, in there and there. And use one of these tools to center it. They will fall out and move around. So also while you're there, make sure the other ones here are nicely centered. We put those in a long time ago, but they're there. So this is the back of the unit. This is the front, so it's going to clip onto the MMU like this, and maybe put these in first. These are M10 screws. Okay, and then you put the label plate on. Okay, so we'll put our label plate on, and this is a custom printed one. This is on Printables. You'll find it if you search for MMU label plate. You can just print it in multiple colors. You probably need to print this after you get your printer working, because otherwise you don't have a multicolor printer yet, of course. But it's a nice addition to match if you want to print this in a different color PETG than the black one. I don't really like the black color. I like to keep everything as orange as possible. So some people printed it in yellow, which looked really neat. There's some different examples of that up on Printables of different people showing off their makes of this plate. It just goes in the plastic, so you don't want to over tighten it. Okay, so we have finished the MMU unit now. Also, this is a good time to take your warranty sticker out of the bag, and it's just a little silver sticker, and put it on the bottom of the MMU nicely right here, so you have that available if you need to call support. So we finished building the MMU3, the main part of it at least, and we're going to then put that on top of the printer, or if you want, just put it to the side. And this is what it should look like. You know, again, I made mine in orange, so you don't have to, but I think it looks good in orange, and whatever color you wanted to print it in, you could. And so now we're going to move on to upgrading the Nextruder for the MK4 so it works with this MMU3. So now we're going to upgrade the extruder for the MMU3, and this is the MK4 extruder. So the first step is to take this lub board off, put it there, and then open this door up, and then undo these 3 screws here, and take the Nextruder off. And if there's a metal ring right here, this little ring right here, and you take that ring off and stick it back onto the gearbox there, and remove this piece here. Put that down, and then remove these 2 screws up here. Take those 2 screws out as well, and this piece here. All these. So now we're looking like we've taken all these things out down here so far. Okay, so here are the parts we've taken off so far. We've taken out the idler arm and the parts up here, and now we're going to take out this little tiny thing here with the tweezers. So I pull this out, and there's a little ball there. We don't want that to fall out. Just put that down on the table there like that. Okay, we need to disassemble this idler here. So just take all the parts of it apart. And apparently these places are getting replaced, so I'm going to put them into a discard bowl I have over to the right. I'm going to get these into this bowl so I know I don't want them anymore. So now we're going to get the new parts out of the bag, these 2 new parts, along with what we just took out. We're going to put these together. So I'll just put it back together. The long pin in the end. Put a short pin there. Bearing. Short pin. Bearing. Flip that over, stick it on. Like that. In there. Screw it in. Okay, there it goes. Okay, we're going to take this piece apart. All the little screws come off it. It's a little tricky. You have to use this torque piece wrench thing and then hold the other side and then turn it. Okay, so these all come apart. Now we have all these little pieces out of it. Okay, so we're going to throw away the screws and the printed parts. So we're going to throw these. Not throw away, but just we're not going to use them. 2 screws in the printed part, and we're going to keep these 3 parts from that. Okay, for the next step, out of the bag, there's this, you can see it reflecting, and there's a tiny little 3x1 magnet in there. We want one of those magnets, and then this piece out of the new bag, the parts bag, and we're going to stick the magnet in that little slot right there on the end. So I'll take the magnet out, and there's 2 magnets in here. See, they're stuck together. Boy, these are tiny. I can just get it in here. Okay, so when I push it against the wood, don't push it against metal because it'll attract it. When I push it against the wood, it sort of gets in there a lot better. I'm going to go with that and put my spare over to the side and keep it in case something ever happens. Okay, for this next step, we've got to prepare these M322. They're new screws that came with it. You need those 2 screws. And the parts out of the bag here. These printed special material parts. PCFF, I think it's called. I can't remember. Those 2 things, and then that. So all these parts. Okay, now with the 3 black parts we have here, take the one that's the tallest that doesn't have the magnet and stick a screw through this hole here, and then put this piece on it, the taller one, and then take the other screw and stick it through the other end, and then take the one that has the magnet on it and stick the non-magnet hole through that. So you end up with this type of a thing. I'll lay that down. Okay, so I'm going to put this like this, and then place this one on top. That. And then put these screws on top of each while holding the bottom of the screws so they don't fall out. And then a normal 2.5 inch. Don't over tighten this, it said. It needs to move freely. It needs to move freely there. Okay, looks good. It's all tight, but it moves around. Okay, now here we have the 2 springs on the old M30 screws. Take these off and take these M30 screws and put them in our green bowl so we don't get confused. Then go in the bag and get out this part here. And Then go in the other bag and get out these M35 screws. It's a different bag. M35 it says on it. And put these two into here. Take a while to screw on. Okay, so they go like that. And then put the spring on the ends of that. So you end up with this creation. Okay, now we take the extruder and pull this apart. Take all the pieces out from it. So we basically just have all these parts. And then this piece right here we're not going to use. So put that in your green bowl so we don't accidentally use it later for something. Okay, now out of the parts bag, get this new O-ring here and this main plate. It's a special plate that comes with it. It can't be printed, it's special material. There are two in it. One's a spare. So keep the spare because you might need it later. You might take the O-ring spare as well, I think that's a spare, and stick it in the bag so you've got them together like that. Complete spare set, I'm guessing. That's the O-ring spare. Okay, now take this. There's a ring, there's a groove inside of here. It's right in there, and you got to put this O-ring in it. This looks kind of tricky. Okay, that wasn't as hard as I thought. So that O-ring is now inside a groove. It just disappeared in that groove. So now we have this piece, we have these two things. I have the gear, it's still in this metal, I probably need to take that out. I don't think we're doing anything with this yet, I'll keep that over here. And we have this piece, this piece, this piece, that piece, and we're not using this ball and filament thing, so I'll put that in a little spare bag to the side and keep it safe. Because that filament's not part of the upgrade. Filament sensor. That's what this is. This is a filament sensor, that little piece with the ball. We're not using that. Okay, so this is our next step, what we need to put together the extruder parts. Okay, now take this new part here and orient it so the notch is in the bottom left and these pieces are facing away from you. And it's going to go let's move the camera here. It's going to go, the notch goes around that, see? So it just fits in like this. Okay, that's how it goes, like that. Yeah, it fell out. So yeah, so this has to come out. This has to come apart. There's no way to do that without it. Okay, so this is going to go in like this. Nicely in there like that. Yeah, you have to get it. You have to take it apart like that. Okay. And then it's really hard to see. There's a slight chamfer. A chamfer is a cutout angle. It's on, I see it, it's on this side. The other side's flat and smooth, and this side has the angle like right there, the chamfer going on. That's the side that goes on here. And we use the tool see, this goes on, this goes over the gears like that. We can kind of move them, and then this thing drops over it, so it's perfectly centered. And then you had to sort of, I remember doing this. This was so hard to do. You had to sort of wiggle it and get it on there. Okay, so this is on straight.
There, it's just a little slight wiggle and then it just goes on real easy like that. Now it's on. Okay. And then we'll take the plate, and we have our 3 screws, and take this off very carefully. While I'm here, I'm going to put a little bit of this grease on these things just to get it. Just apply a little more lithium grease on here. Doesn't hurt while we're here. And that's the Prusa lube that came with it. And then we use these 3 screws to put it back on. Okay, it's all back together. Okay, so now we're just going to close all this up. So it puts this down, push that back in, and then put the cover back in like that, and then screw this little thing. This is a new one that came with it, MMU, so it's a different size. I think it's a 2.6 internal diameter Festo, so if you have the old Festos, get rid of them. So now we're going to take the 4 screws off the corners here, and then take this plate comes off like this, and then we're going to take these 2 screws here out so this can come up. So the MMU cable comes through. We're going to put a zip tie there, but it's going to come through down here, through that hole there, and then it plugs into the bottom one right here on the right. It's plugged in now, so I just got to kind of take up the slack like this, and then I got to put this plate down, but this little thing's got to get cut out so it fits. So I'm going to do that. I'll get back in a sec. So literally these things just break off right here, these little things, if I snap it, there, so they come right out. They're barely in there to begin with, and now the MMU cable can fit through. Okay, so now we have the cover back on, and the cable's nice. Zip tie there, and it all looks good fitting in that little area, that little indent we made. So on the Prusa download page, we can get the firmware we need, 6.00, which was released on April 17th, 2024, as I'm doing this now. And also on April 4th, we got Prusaslicer 2.74, which is required for MMU3. Well, 2.73 or higher is required, but this also fixes something where you've got MMU's multi-material stuff from Bamboo Studio Maker World, I guess. You couldn't print it, but that fixes that. So anyway, we're going to download these 2 things and install them. Okay, so I'll turn the printer on. It said, do you want to flash the firmware? I say yes, flash. And so it's now going to verify it and flash the firmware to get me up to 6.00 official release, which was just released April 17th, so yesterday, as I'm making this video. All right, so this will finish. We're now going to do the same thing for the MMU, but we have to connect the cable, the USB cable, directly to the MMU from our computer. So you need to move the printer to near your computer and stick the cable on the side, little USB thing in the side of the MMU, which is just kind of right in there, that little thing there. That's where you stick it. That's the USB connector. Okay, now we go to the MMU3 page on the Prusa downloads and get the MMU firmware for MK4 3.9, which is 3.03. So we've already downloaded this. This might just, let's download it anyway. See what that is. Okay. Yeah, it's a different file, so we need to get that too. So we've got our cable connected to our computer there, USB that came with it, and yeah, use the one that came with it. Some other ones are maybe too big and won't fit in there properly. And that connects to your computer's USB. Okay, now even though we have this connected and the printer's on, it doesn't see it. So you have to go to set, the MMU's not on, so you got to go to MMU and then turn that on. There, continue.
We need to start with that filament extruder, make sure the filament extruder sensor continue. No. Insert filament in the extruder. Okay, it wants me to do a whole bunch of things here. So let me do that and we'll get back here. Okay, well this is interesting. It basically told me that the MMU is incompatible with the firmware in the printer. Yeah, I know that. So maybe since I've got the MMU on now, I can see if I can flash it from the computer. Let's see. Okay, so to flash the firmware for the MMU, you go to Prusaslicer and you go to Configuration, Flash Printer Firmware, and then it auto detects it. See right there? So even though now that I had turned it on in the settings on the printer, now I'm able to connect to my MMU from my computer just because of that, what I just did a second ago. So now I can click this and browse to get the file. Let's do that. Okay, so I browse to it, it detects it, and now I can flash the firmware for the MMU through that cable. Okay, here we go. Flashing succeeded. Good, close. Okay, back to the printer. We've just flashed the MMU firmware, and so now we can unplug the cable there, and then we'll just hit restart. Let's see, restart. Guess I'll just turn the printer off and on, back on again. So hopefully we don't get any issues. Okay, good so far. Okay, it says please complete calibrations and tests. Let's just go to settings and see if it thinks the MMU's in there. MMU units on, good. Changing filament. Unload manually. Filament detected unexpectedly. Okay, so it turns out the error I was getting was really simple. It was just that the SuperFINDA sensor here is pushed down too low, so it thought filament was in here, and it was saying unload filament. So basically when I was putting this together, I just pushed this down a little bit. So we'll adjust this later, but right now I just pull this up so it doesn't have that problem, and immediately I got the message that you know, to do the GearBox Alignment, which is the next step. So we need to open this first. I didn't do it. Okay, open that up. Now rotate these each 1.5 ways. Okay, continue. Okay, now it says tighten 1, 2, 3. So 1, 2, 3. Okay, we're doing it over tighten, continue, close the idler door. Continue tests. Okay, we need to start with filament. Without the filament in the extruder, make sure there's no filament in the extruder, continue. Let's get this light out of here. Is filament in this filament in the filament sensor? No. In progress. Insert filament into the extruder until it detects this filament. Into the sensor until it detects the filament. Okay, wow, it's moving. I could feel it when it did that. This thing moved backward. Okay, filament inserted, press continue, continue. Calibrating, do not remove filament. Filament sensor calibrated. Okay, filament's still in there. Just pull it out? Just pull it out, okay. Okay, so we're gonna adjust the SuperFINDA, which is the MMU sensor that tells us if filament is in there or not. And that far right button right there on the bottom here says off. There's nothing, there's no filament in the sensor on the top, and this is the one on the extruder also off, but we're going to be testing this one here. So when we put something in here like this, so right now it's off, if I push this thing in, it pushes up on that ball, and now it should read on. So go back down here, Now it reads on. If I pull it out, I'll pull it out right now. 1, 2, 3, out. Now it's off. So that's working correctly. And you just have to raise the sensor up and down to get it so it reads, you know, on when you push it in, off when you pull it out. And that's how you calibrate that. And then once you have it where you want, tighten here, but don't over tighten this. Just enough so it doesn't move around really. Okay, I'm going to retest this the selector test by putting in filament here. Do it properly this time. Okay, so that should stay on the far right one there in the bottom, on. And then, you know, if when I pull it out, it should switch to 1, 2, 3. Little switch to off. Okay, so that's good. I wanted to fine tune that a little bit better with a piece of filament. So what these are these are cassettes that you have to load. This is the new Prusa buffer right here. So this is what you have to print all this out. And there's actually, if you printed this out already for the MMU3 before and you're using it with the MK3S Plus, there is a new cassette style that you need to print out. Couple new parts on this. This part is wider. The internal part is just a little pin. I'm not going to go over how to put this together. It's pretty simple. You can see it's just some screws. There's nothing to it. It's all really, really easy assembly. But some of these parts, they say you have to print them out differently for the MK4. This part is wider. These are thicker. So if you've printed it already, you got to do it all over again. Not all of it, but some of it. Anyway, to load these up, so you basically have a spool here, and you've got to get the spool coming in from your spool. So here I've got the filament loading down here, and you just feed it around that loop. You can see it going into that tube there, and it just gets loaded in like this. And then once it's into the system, so in my system I just keep it going. I keep it going down all the way down to the almost down to the. You can see it coming into the back of the MMU there. And then you just put this cassette back in here like this. And so you would repeat that for all of these, you know, after getting this piece cut right. So that's how you load it. Okay, so I've got the Prusa buffer now configured with this system, and it just sits on a peg on the back. This is a 3D printable part that I designed. It's on Printables. We're going to build the Prusa spool holders now. They come in a bag. Each bag has one spool holder, so there'll be 5 of these. And they have these parts here that are these legs. And you basically just take it. This is like the easiest thing in the whole install. You basically put a wheel in each end, and then you stick these together like this, and they clip. They snap like that, and then they want you to put these little nubs in the bottom. You put one there, and then one here, just the rubber things. I'm not going to do that. It's like self-explanatory. And then you just slide this onto here and slide that onto there. And then there's this piece here that may or may not have shipped with your bag. If you didn't get it, you can download the part and print. It prints in about 12 minutes. It's really easy. And it just clips on. It just clips on there. And so basically what happens is your PTFE tube is going to go in here, and then your spool just sits on that. So you take your spool, you put your filament in there. If it had the rubber legs on it, wouldn't slide around. And just put the spool on it like that. So, and then it rolls. Okay, so now I've set up the buffer and the spools, and I'll show you in a second what they look like. But I'm going to start loading in the filament. So preload filament 1. It's good. Okay, now preload filament 2. And I'll just show you how I do this. I probably do it a little differently than most people. But this is my setup. It's a custom spool holder and buffer system. And here's filament 2. And we'll just load that in. And then it's good. You can hear it do that. And then we'll preload filament 3. let's just reach over and I can do the same thing here. Just there. That's good. And then, so this system I have here is it's basically center spool rings, so I can use cardboard spools, and the buffer has no moving parts. It's Martin's slot buffer. I've been using it on it's all on Printables under Real 3D Prints channel, but it's a design. I've got the whole thing shared out there. And so that's how I'll load these up, and then we'll print some. I'll finish the last one, and then we'll print a test print. Okay, so in Prusaslicer, we need to run the configuration wizard to make sure we've got the new MK4 printers in there. So you see this input shaper. So check that off. Check your nozzles off, and I can slice that then, and I get the slots for each one. Okay, put the file in the printer, and we just hit print. Say print, da-da-dum. So basically we have a slot buffer here. These slots, you can manually load them like this, and these are magnetically connected, so they kind of pop out nicely when you do that. And these spools just roll in center bearings, and they support cardboard. And if those don't fit, I've got them in different colors here, and I've got a whole basket of them printed out of different sizes for different spool centers. So it's an exact fit type of a thing, where you just put it on and the spool fits, and you get the width this way and the size that way. So it's always a perfect center bearing, which that's a big problem. And there's no friction this way. These are the ball bearings that came with the MMUs right here and used in all these things. When it retracts, it's gonna do a loop in here and make the loops. And sometimes if it just happens that the curve there's so little friction in the system, it happens that it might push back all the way to the spool. There's a little knob here where we can dial it in and push against the filament to force the friction on the filament, so the buffer loop happens here, not on the spool. But that's only happens like 1 in 20 filaments. It's really rare I need to even use these dials. So there's the green buffer there. And now it's going to load the pink in. There it goes. That's Solitech filament. Okay, so a little bit of fast forward here. So I did have a problem when I was printing, and it was doing fine with my 5 filaments, printing my test model, except on row 1 and row 5. And I troubleshooted and figured out that the problem was that row 5, the pin had actually come out of the pulley thing here. It had not been tightened enough. I was really scared originally of over tightening these pins and stripping them, so I actually under tightened 5 to the point where it got loose and fell out. And then 1, I guess, I don't know yet, but I think it's down below. If I turn this, I can't quite turn it, but I think it's oriented wrong and it's upside down because I can't see the pin. I got this box here and then dumped out the, turned this upside down, and when I did that, I found my little tiny pulley thing there, so I didn't lose it, so that's good. I'll get this put in better, and I'll figure this out, and we'll get back in a second. Preload to MMU. Let's do 1. Preload 3, that moves. Push this in. And you can kind of see it's grabbed it too. You can see it kind of moves it back and forth to make sure it's got it. And then 5 goes to slot 5. Move that in. There, you can feel on the finger, you can see how it's moving it back and forth. That's all good. Okay, now we can print. Print. Okay, now it's going to go. Yeah, so I'm using the tube they gave me, the 2.5mm tube. I probably will switch out to a 3 once this wears out, but that's okay. I'm gonna look for a part where I can use a different one of these PCM10s here. Maybe I can mod that. But this is good. So yeah, all these tubings are 3mm and the ones inside are 3mm. So we're gonna see if this works. But I think if I had the Prusa buffer, I probably would have, if I didn't have this already, I probably would have just used the Prusa buffer. And it sits right there, so it just sits right here in this little thing. So it's a little bit more compact even than this idea. This, so let's see, it's gonna start up now. All right, so I'll let this go and come back in a little bit after it's done. Again, the first time I did it, it did print the first couple layers, but then eventually those little, the error was 2 of the pulley idlers weren't firmly screwed on there. So that was definitely the issue there. So we fixed that, so maybe everything's gonna work this time fine. Okay. So the print succeeded after fixing that pulley gear issue by tightening them up and positioning them properly, and perhaps also by fixing the selector, readjusting it with a piece of filament rather than our thin tool. So those might have been the two. Well, I know the pulleys were definitely one problem that we had to fix. So everything's working great. This was a test print that was 100 tool changes. It took an hour and a half of 5 different PLA colors, several of them on cardboard spools, and I used my custom design multicolor system for the filament path behind the MMU. So this is the same system I used on the MK3S Plus. You can see it there and also there. So this is the third one. So go ahead and subscribe, like the video if you like what you saw, if it helped you out. Hopefully I offered a lot of different tips, and you could also watch the assembly and kind of get a sense of how to put this whole thing together. If you're starting from scratch, definitely go, before you do anything, go and get the R4 revision parts that were just posted recently, and make sure you get that from Printables. Also get the latest firmware and Prusaslicer. So a lot of stuff has been released very recently, and this thing just arrived shipping out to people. You know, people who ordered it back in July of last year, so it's now April of 2024 making this video, so it's just arriving now. But they had some issues with specifically the Nextruder, and so a lot of the parts were revolved around exhausting testing with that. So kudos to Prusa for really not shipping a product that was not working. This thing works flawlessly, in my opinion. Okay, thank you, and look forward to you for the next video.